On today's edition of the Locked On Blues podcast, Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou. If you were starting up a franchise, brand new franchise, which one would you want to build your team around? Fortunately, the St. Louis Blues have both of them, so it's not really a debate we have to answer, but I'm going to be digging into each of their stats last season, some of the more advanced stats, and giving my take on why each player I think could be a potential franchise cornerstone for the St. Louis Blues down the road. Plus, taking a few mailbag questions at the end of the episode. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm your host, Josh Hyman, as always, and we got a beautiful episode for you guys today because it is the first episode of September, the month in which the St. Louis Blues play hockey. Now, obviously, it's just preseason hockey, but hey, it's hockey. It's going to be a great episode today. First segment, I'll be talking about Jordan Kyrou, diving into his stats. Second, and the tail end of the second segment, I'm going to be talking about Robert Thomas and just kind of comparing the two of them and giving my thoughts on why each player, is a potential franchise cornerstone for the St. Louis Blues moving forward. Plus, like I said, some mailbag questions at the end in the third segment. For those of you that are new here, what's up? I'm Josh. I've been doing this show for a while. If you're returning, hello, you know me. Check out the show on YouTube if you're not there. Subscribe. We're getting close to 500. I'm really, really excited about that. Might do something special, sort of a cool episode there. Getting close to 500 subscribers, plus 500 episodes in total. A lot of cool stuff coming up, a lot of cool stuff in the works. Thanks to anyone who makes Locked On Blues your first listen of the day. Free and available on all podcast platforms. You know the drill. Before we start, though, a little bit of personal news now. If you tuned into the episode a few episodes ago on YouTube, there was a cat that hopped up onto my shoulders. Well, big news. That was a foster kitten. We were taking care of it, but now me personally, am adopting that cat. She will be my cat. When I move out, I'm going to take her with me. So I'm a cat dad now. Big news. Wanted to share that with y'all. If you want to see what she looks like, I forget which episode it is, but a few episodes ago, or if you look on Twitter, she climbed up on my shoulders during the episode, and it was really cute. So, yeah, there's that. With that out of the way, though, let's get into today's debate. You guys seem to really enjoy the Torey Krug versus Scott Perunovich debate that I did last week, so I figured I could keep up with the trend and do a debate that's a little bit less relevant. I think the reason why I talked about Torey Krug and Scott Perunovich was because I don't think that they could coexist on a team together for an extended period of time. The good thing about Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou is, all things considered, it is very likely that both of them will be on the St. Louis Blues for a majority of their career. Now, obviously, Robert Thomas has his big extension. Jordan Kyrou does not yet, but we'll get into that, all that stuff and more. First player I do want to talk about, though, is Jordan Kyrou. So let's talk about Kyrou, huh? He is 24 years old, 6 foot, 196 pounds, was drafted in the second round of the 2016 draft. He is a right winger. In terms of fantasy rankings, he comes in at the 49th highest rated skater in terms of the top 300 skaters. And let's dive into his stats last year. Now, one thing I will say, and you'll probably notice this later when I compare the two, Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou had extremely similar stats last season, which is why I kind of want to do this episode, maybe dig into some more advanced stats. So let's get the comparison out of the way first. Jordan Kyrou had 27 goals, 48 points for 75 assists. Robert Thomas had 20 goals, 56 assists for 76 points. So they were within 1 point of each other. Kyrou had more goals. Thomas had more assists. Robert Thomas played in 2 less games, so his points per game was slightly higher at 1.06. Jordan Kyrou scored 23 of his goals at even strength versus Robert Thomas got 15. 19 power play points for Jordan Kyrou, 14 for Robert Thomas. 2 shorthanded goals for Robert Thomas, none for Jordan Kyrou. 115 shots on goal for Thomas, 188 for Kyrou, plus 17 on the season for Robert Thomas, plus 10 for Kyrou. Both of them stayed in the penalty box relatively well. Only 20 penalty minutes for Jordan Kyrou and only 16 for Robert Thomas. Now, Robert Thomas took a lot of faceoffs. Obviously, Jordan Kyrou did not. But the faceoffs that Jordan Kyrou did take, only 6 of them won for 40%. Robert Thomas won 49.8% of his faceoffs. Neither of the two are very physical. 13 hits for Robert Thomas, 6 for Jordan Kyrou, 25 blocked shots for Robert Thomas, 23 for Jordan Kyrou. Robert Thomas had 50 giveaways. Jordan Kyrou only had 32, but Robert Thomas had 60 takeaways compared to Jordan Kyrou's 36. So one thing I talked a lot about with Torrey Krug and Scott Perunovich was that giveaway to takeaway ratio. And they're both relatively similar there. 10 more for Robert Thomas and 4 more for Jordan Kyrou. But when you compare the percentages, it's about even. Like I said, Jordan Kyrou played in 74 games last year. Robert Thomas played in 72. 3.7 points per 60 minutes for Jordan Kyrou, 3.4 for Robert Thomas. Both were pretty productive on the power play, with Jordan Kyrou being slightly more productive with 8.1 power play points per 60 minutes, 5.7 for Robert Thomas. I don't want to just be reading stats all episode, but you guys get the point. A few more stats that jump out at me. I do want to look at their Corsi and their player usage chart. So Robert Thomas has a very positive Corsi, or not very positive, but in comparison to Jordan Kyrou, he does. Robert Thomas has a 49.1% Corsi, which means when he's on the ice, the Blues are in an offensive position 49% of the time. But he also starts in the offensive zone more than Jordan Kyrou. Starts 56% of Robert Thomas's starts are in the offensive zone compared to Jordan Kyrou's 54, and Jordan Kyrou has a 46% Corsi. So based on that, Robert Thomas is a little bit better at driving offense. Anyways, let's talk about Jordan Kyrou first, and then we'll talk about Robert Thomas in the second segment. So Jordan Kyrou, where do you start? He is an incredibly dynamic, incredibly skilled, incredibly gifted player. He is so fun to watch. Maybe my favorite player to watch on the St. Louis Blues. He has these plays where he'll pick the puck up in the defensive zone, and in a flash, he'll be down the other end of the ice with his blazing speed. He won the fastest skater competition at the All-Star game over Connor McDavid, which is ridiculous. That is a huge testament to his skating ability. He is a great player. He puts up a lot of points. He's very flashy. He's very easy to play with because he's so fast and he draws on such the defense. But there are some criticisms with his game, and that is evident by the fact that his ice time decreased later in the season. Now, 2 seasons in a row, we have seen Jordan Kyrou get off to an absolutely torrid start, lighting the league on fire and then slowing up in the second half. Now, the first season was much more dramatic. 2 seasons ago, he pretty much disappeared in the second half. Last season, he wasn't quite as ineffective in the second half, but his production definitely declined. And part of that is because he played less, but the reasons why he played less, I think, are understandable. When Jordan Kyrou isn't producing offensively, when he kind of goes into those ruts, he becomes very turnover happy. He makes ill-advised passes. He'll skate with his head down. He'll skate into crowds of players and lose the puck that way. And he won't be quite as engaged on defense. He'll be more focused on, the offensive side of things, which is understandable. A guy who relies on his skill so much might be guilty of a little bit of cherry picking here or there, or not back checking as much when things don't go his way. And that is why I think he kind of declined at the tail end of last season as well, just because his minutes went down as a result of his play being a little bit more inconsistent. And then with the lesser minutes, it's hard for him to get back into that groove. So it's understandable. It's frustrating, but definitely a legitimate criticism of his game. However, he did have an extreme breakout season last year, up there close to point per game. Was he above point per game? Let me look. Jordan Kyrou played in, I know I just read the stat, but I wasn't even thinking. He was slightly above point per game. So him and Robert Thomas above point per game last year, which is great. I think that's a mark of a really elite offensive talent. I think there's no argument that both him and Robert Thomas are elite players. That's kind of the whole point. I framed this episode as a debate, but in reality, it's more so just comparing the two best young players on the St. Louis Blues, which I believe that both of them are. It kind of goes without saying. They're extremely talented young players that, any team would be lucky to have. That being said, though, I think that is close to all I have to say about Jordan Kyrou. Obviously there's more to be said. I've talked about him a ton on this podcast in the past, so, you can go back to old episodes for that. But in the second segment, I'm going to be talking about Robert Thomas and then kind of giving my final comparison of the two, giving my case for each one. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But before I get into that second segment, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at Built Bar. Now, if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. They do not miss. I'll introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, cookie dough chunks, and of course they're covered in chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein. So run to built.com, snag a box for you and the family, or just grab a box for yourself. Hide it in your closet so your family doesn't get it. That's what I do sometimes. If I get a package from Built Bar and I'm not home, half of them will be gone by the time I get to them. So they're a hot commodity in my house. Go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 at built.com for 15% off your entire order. And I'll be right back with the second half of today's episode. All right, so we spent the first chunk of this episode talking about Jordan Kyrou. Now we're moving on to the counterpart in this debate, if you want to call it that, in Robert Thomas. Now, I read all the stats there. Robert Thomas is a center. He was drafted a year before Jordan Kyrou in the first round, drafted I believe 20th overall. And yeah, what can I say about Robert Thomas that I haven't said already? In these episodes, he is a guy that just received a massive extension from the St. Louis Blues, going to make him the highest paid player, in St. Louis Blues history. He is a player that Doug Armstrong himself and the front office has put a ton of trust in. They have basically said that, when you sign a guy for this many years at that term, you're expecting them to be the face of your franchise. They're expecting him to be a player to build around. And obviously that's no slight to Jordan Kyrou, but the front office has a lot of faith in Robert Thomas. Now, Robert Thomas does have one more year under his belt, or even 2 more years as a full-time NHLer than Jordan Kyrou, which is why I'm not super concerned about Jordan Kyrou not having an extension yet and Robert Thomas having one. I think after this season, as long as Jordan Kyrou continues to improve and continues to progress, he'll be at a similar state to where Robert Thomas was when he got his extension. Therefore, I think Kyrou will get his extension after this next season. I think that makes a lot of sense. But like I said, Robert Thomas is a little bit more proven in the sense that he was, he's been around. He was on the roster that went to the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. Obviously, he did have that unfortunate injury at the hands of Torrey Krug, broke his wrist and was unable to play in the series following that. But, had his moments in that playoff run, had his moments in the regular season. He assisted on Pat Maroon's game-winning goal in the series against Dallas, my favorite goal in Blues history, all things considered. He's been around the block a little bit more than Kyrou. He's less flashy, he's less exciting, but he's more of a traditional, good hockey player. He fits the mold. He's a two-way center. His defense has definitely could still use some work, but he's capable in that end. He does spend a majority of the time in the offensive zone. Like the majority of his face-offs happen in the offensive zone, but when asked to, he'll play on the penalty kill sometimes. He'll back check, he'll break plays up. He's a good two-way center, but his offense is where he really shines. He's not as much of a goal scorer as Jordan Kyrou. That's something that definitely came on for Robert Thomas at the end of the season. He started shooting the puck a little bit more. And getting more goals. But where he really shines is his passing. There are a few players in the entire NHL that can pass the puck like Robert Thomas can. It is amazing. Like sometimes he'll throw a pass and I'll in that split second, I'll be like, what the heck is he doing? And all of a sudden some player will come flying out of nowhere and it'll be perfectly on their stick. Like he really sees the game very slowly. It slows down for him when he's making a pass. And you can see that, he's not as turnover prone as Jordan Kyrou in that sense, in the sense that, he doesn't make as many ill-advised passes. I think that part of his game comes a little bit easier than Jordan Kyrou. Doesn't have the speed that Jordan Kyrou has, but I think he absolutely makes up for that in the way that he sets up his teammates, in the sense that Jordan Kyrou is able to draw the offense with his speed and his skill. Draw the defense, sorry. Robert Thomas is able to draw the defense with his passing ability. They always have to have their head on a swivel, making sure that he's able to pass the puck, or not able to pass the puck to an open player, because he is so dead with that. One thing I want to talk about, I've given Robert Thomas his praise. I've given Jordan Kyrou his praise. One area where I think each of them can improve heading into next season, starting with Jordan Kyrou, I think I kind of talked about it. It's just cleaning up the turnovers, making the smart plays even when he's not producing offensively. That'll keep his ice time up, and that will keep his production up. Inevitably when teams sort of figure him out in the second half of the season, like has happened, his numbers are going to go down a little bit. And as the playoffs approach, it gets a little bit harder to score. And for Jordan Kyrou, it's all about just staying consistent in his effort. and his decision making. When he's on fire, he's the best player on the ice for the St. Louis Blues, putting up multi-point nights left and right. However, when he's not on fire, when he's in a rut, he can almost be a bit of a liability. So I think it's just about cleaning up those mistakes, staying consistent, even when he's not producing at the level that he wants to, and he will see the numbers continue to skyrocket, especially in that latter half of the season. One area that I would like to see Robert Thomas improve is an area that I think he already started improving on in the tail end of last season, and that is shooting the puck more. I think if Robert Thomas starts scoring goals left and right, he could be a potential 100-point player. Just because of how many assists that he already gets, being a pass-first player, teams kind of expect that out of him at this point. If Robert Thomas has the puck on a 2-on-1, the defenses expect him to pass. Maybe that's not the best example because every 2-on-1 is different, but you get what I'm saying. If he is established himself as a premier passer, players are going to expect the pass when Robert Thomas is out there. He can score goals too. He was a 20-goal scorer last season. He scored some really nice goals. He's got a really sneaky good shot when he uses it. It's very quick, very hard to figure out if you're a goalie. Elusive shot. He just doesn't use it quite as much. So if Robert Thomas how to be a little bit more selfish of a player at times, not necessarily forcing shots, but sometimes, even if it's not a prime scoring opportunity, just keep the goalies honest, keep the defenses honest, put the puck on net, rather than making that last pass. Because if he is able to establish himself as a goal scorer next season or in seasons down the road, that is just going to open up passing lanes even more for him. Robert Thomas is already a magician when it comes to these tiny, tiny passing lanes and fitting the puck through, threading the needle. But the more that he establishes himself as a shooter and a goal scorer in this league, the more those passing lanes are going to be present, the more that they're going to be, exploitable for him. And if he scores 30 goals instead of 20 goals, I also think that will allow him to get 70 assists instead of 60 like this past season, because he's going to have more opportunities. He's going to get more ice time this season, with that extension. I think he has an opportunity to be one of the top talents in the NHL. In terms of Jordan Kyrou versus Robert Thomas, who do you pick? I think it depends on the scenario. If I'm going full 82-game season, who do I think is going to be more productive? I'm going with Robert Thomas. But if it's each player at their hottest, each player is at the peak of their game, and it's a game 7, I'm going Jordan Kyrou, because there's nothing that can stop Jordan Kyrou when he is on a tear like he is. Again, neither of those are any disrespect to the other player. Certain players are like that. Certain players are streaky, and it makes them more valuable in the sense that sometimes they'll just create an entire winning streak by themselves, versus some players are more steady Eddie, consistent. They're not going to break out for hat tricks left and right, but they're going to give you the same product night in, night out. And both players are extremely valuable in their own way for the St. Louis Blues, and I am so excited to watch them continue to grow and progress next season. Now, in this upcoming third and final segment, I'm going to be reacting to, I think there's only 2 mailbag questions, so I'm going to be getting into those. Make sure you stay tuned. Be right back. All right, got a couple mailbag questions on Locked On Blues Twitter, both of which come from Richard Clay. Thank you, Richard, or else I wouldn't have had a third segment for today's episode. Richard Clay asks, what line does Jake Neighbors end up on by the end of the season? That is a really difficult question, because who knows? I think with the St. Louis Blues and with Craig Berube, that's kind of a hard question, because he doesn't really keep his lines consistent all that much. Saying Jake Neighbors could end up on X line by the end of the season, I think a better question is, what is the highest line we could see Jake Neighbors playing on for a consistent, extended period of time? I think we could see Jake Neighbors in the top 6. I think he makes the roster out of training camp. The Blues really, really liked him last year. The front office is very, very complimentary of him and his ability. He looked really good in his 9-game stint, and he was one of the best players in juniors last season. He was the captain of the team that won the WHL championship, I believe. I always get the leagues mixed up, but he is a great leader. I think beyond just his skill, he's a guy that really gets along with a lot of the Blues players. If you look on social media, he's constantly hanging out with like Robert Thomas and Torrey Krug and guys like that. He spends a lot of time with the players. I think the players really like him, and the front office really likes him. I think he is 100% a shoo-in for the third line, maybe the fourth line at the start of the regular season, but depending on injuries and chemistry, I could see him up on the second line. Heck, I could even see him up on the first line. It really just depends, because the Blues don't really have a traditional first through fourth line, in the sense that, your first line is your best line, your second line is slightly less skilled but also good. Your third line is your checking line, and your fourth line is your grinder line. The Blues kind of just roll three high potent scoring lines and then a fourth line that's kind of more defensive focused. But because of that, I don't think saying that Jake Neighbors will be on the third line all season would necessarily be a bad thing for him. I think he'll still get plenty of ice time. I think he'll probably see some power play time here and there. I think it really depends on injuries and chemistry. There's going to be times when players are out of the lineup and Jake Neighbors plays up because of that. If a winger on the first or second line gets injured, I think Jake Neighbors is honestly my first choice to fill in that spot just because of his potential and how young he is. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Berube favor more of the veterans in that sense, the Brandon Saads of the team and stuff like that. But I could totally see Jake Neighbors earning a spot in the top six. I think the better suited for him though is going to be power play time. I think he could really earn himself a good chunk of that and put up a large number of points. I'm really, really excited to watch him play next year. Him, Kyrou, and Thomas could be the future of the St. Louis Blues. One final question, less of a team, player related question, more of just a general exciting question. What do you want to see on the reverse retro this year? That is a great question. And I've been thinking about it. So the Blues have done a couple really, really nice jerseys. You have the clown jerseys, as they say, with the stripes at the bottom, the blue and the red version of that. I love those. And then the newest jersey that they've been kind of doing is the Winter Classic. The powder blue with the old style logo, and then most recent year the cream white with the old style logo. The Blues have been really, really good about putting out some gorgeous retro jerseys or alternate jerseys or whatever. I'm assuming the Blues are going to get a new reverse retro. I haven't seen anything confirming that 100%, but I think most teams are, if not all teams are getting a new reverse retro. So if and when the Blues unveil a reverse retro for either this year or next season or whatever, I have a bold take. And it's something that it's a jersey style the Blues have never worn before, and you guys might disagree with me and think I'm stupid, and honestly, it might be a bad idea. I think they should have a yellow jersey. Now, would that be my preference? I don't know. I mean, I'd have to look. But I think that they could use the blue and the white like they have, maybe even the red in the past. But the one thing the St. Louis Blues have never had is a yellow jersey. And you see it right here in my hat. They've got yellow in their logo. They've got yellow on all their jerseys. It is one of their main colors. Now, the Predators do have a yellow jersey. The Boston Bruins do have a yellow jersey. The Pittsburgh Penguins. There are a lot of teams out there with yellow jerseys already. And the Predators are an example of how yellow jerseys cannot work. If you just make it a solid yellow, I think it's kind of ugly. But if the Blues do something like the style of the powder blue jersey with, yellow, maybe not as much of a vibrant yellow as what the Predators do, but their yellow with the powder blue and the white, maybe even some red in there. Who knows? I think it would be very, very bold. But I really think it could work. I think it could look really, really sweet if they really committed to a out there jersey style. A yellow jersey. Look, do I think it's possible? Not really. I don't think there's any chance the Blues unveil a yellow jersey, just because of, like I said, the Predators and all the other teams that have yellow as their primary color. I just think it's kind of a tough one to pull off. And even if they do unveil a yellow jersey, there's a decent chance that it's ugly because yellow jerseys are kind of hard to pull off in the NHL. But I think the Penguins are a good example of a team that's done it right. I like their yellow alternate jerseys with the black and the gold, and the Bruins are the same way. They their yellow jersey, like some of their Winter Classic jerseys, I think are really, really nice if you could pull it off correctly. But it's definitely hit or miss. I think it would be a really bold choice, like I said, for the St. Louis Blues. I know I would buy one just because it would be iconic. It would get people talking. Everyone's like, oh my God, the Blues wearing a yellow jerseys. People would either love it or they would hate it. There'd be no in between. And look, that's what happened with the red, reverse retro jerseys for the St. Louis Blues. That's what happened with even the first blue ones. People either hated it or they loved it. There was no in between. And if the St. Louis Blues want to continue along that path of putting out some divisive jerseys, I think yellow is the way to go. I would love to see it. I would buy one. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. If you guys have any cool ideas for reverse retro concepts, I know there's probably some great artists out there that have designed some. I would love to see those. If you guys have any that you know of, let me know. Also, let me know your thoughts on the Robert Thomas versus Jordan Kyrou debate, like I said, in the comments or the replies on Twitter. I think it's a great debate, and fortunately one that, like I said, doesn't really have to be a debate because the Blues have both of them, and it's great. That being said, that is all the time I have for you guys on today's episode. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to me on, or Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, getting close to 500 subscribers. Gonna try to put something special together for that milestone. I know it's small and whatever, but it's cool. 500, big deal. That's halfway to 1,000 and one. I don't know. I was gonna try to figure out the percentage of how close that is to 1,000,000, but I couldn't. I couldn't stick it out as a math major, so I'm not gonna be able to figure that one out on the fly. Anyways, that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL, or follow Locked On Blues on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Locked On Blues. Thank you all so much for listening, and as always, let's go Blues.